This is it. I'm calling it a wrap on my game of GD40. This is the position at the 1740 hour. The game would normally end at the 2000, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more turns after this one. I just played through the command phase and the aircraft and artillery phase, and essentially what has happened is that there's two things really. One is that both sides are almost completely out of artillery. They've shot all their smoke, so this is the last bits of smoke on the board. The French really need smoke to cover their attack, and the French have just 3 rounds of artillery left, and the Germans I think 4. The Germans are okay though because they're on the defence. They're still nicely ensconced in stun here. All these units are dug in, which gives them a massive defensive benefit. And so the French, essentially what I did was I advanced the attack too quickly. They should have spent a lot of time just bombarding. Like, this is a key point here because there's a little village here. This is the storm, which is essentially the target. There's a little village of 2 hexes here. So these outliers, they were kind of interdicting all of the advance. The French wanted to take that first before they could really take that. So I should have really sort of covered all this in smoke, completely bombarded that with massive battalion artillery missions. That's essentially 3 sort of artillery fires on 1 hex at a time. But to do that, you need your troops well back, or else they're going to be in the blast radius. So they're up close now. They couldn't use what few. Oops, it doesn't matter anyway. The game's finished. This turn they had 3 battery rounds individual, so not battalion, which has a bigger blast radius, smaller blast radius on this, and they all missed. And that was kind of finally the last straw. So the lack of artillery or previous inefficient artillery use, combined with this whole force here has not joined the attack. It's merely moved up into its kind of jumping off positions, because it's got the maximum weighted turns accrued, but it's because of the command prep rating of 7, which is the highest you could possibly get of the French, which means they're the slowest, combined with the size of the mission, which is 2, because there's a mix of units, a mix of battalions in there, means they need a 52. They can never get better than rolling 52 on 2d6, like 5 and 2, to allow them to start the attack. And so what should have happened was these were going up here and these were coming here, and then this was kind of like a spoiling diversionary attack to pin these units. So this had to attack alone, and this doesn't do anything. What I actually did was I thought this is never going to happen unless these get in, so I rolled for the next turns to see when they would actually kick off, and they would kick off at 1840, which is 3 turns later than this, but then that only gives them 5 turns in which to help take these hexes here. In the meantime, the Germans had managed to move these down here. That village is still there. These are dug in. These are on a woods line. So it would really realistically take 1 turn to get to this woods line, 2 turns to start engaging these, and this is all without any artillery fire or smoke. So that's 1, 2, say 3, 4 to get through those. So 5, they might just get up to the outskirts, outlying village, but they'll never be able to help take Ston. So that's it. The French call off their attack. End of story. And essentially what happened was I drew up all the French, except I think 1, op sheets before the game, so that they could start accruing right from the beginning, because they're so slow to change their op sheets. I don't think that was a bad thing, but what happened then was so these ones were accruing turns, so they could kick off straight away, but these ones were added to their op sheet after they'd finished a previous mission. So perhaps they should never have had that previous mission, which was that little spoiling attack there, because it didn't really do much. It kind of delayed. It kind of disorganized the German perimeter defense. But what it did actually, the result was that the Germans quickly turned it around, and it made them move down here sort of quicker, maybe further down here than they might have done. So the problem was, I think the problem of this is that their Oder cycle is very slow and the German Oder cycle is very quick, so they can get in and react while these ones are still performing previous stuff. So it was that classic situation. The French had a lot of force, but were not able to wield it effectively against a smaller, more mobile force. In retrospect, my original French plan was that the French basically, they bugged out of here very quickly, wanting to conserve that force, which did become a useful combat force, which was remaining, which sort of held this, the right flank of then the whole French force in later turns. But it didn't really do much. It had a useful place. It would have, against attacks, and it sort of created a spoiling attack against here. So, these units, well, sort of half of these units from this side could not join in defence, but as it was, that they weren't needed anyway. So in retrospect, they should have stayed in Ston, and maybe then that, even though the Germans were a huge force being dug, the thing was they couldn't be dug in. They could only be hasty defence. I don't know. I think they would have been ejected quite quickly anyway. So it's tricky. It's tricky. I'm not sure how to play this. I would like to play it or to see it played with the French winning to see how to do it. The German plan was great. Essentially move in, get dug in, and create perimeter defence. These blue markers to remind me that these are all reserve battalions. So yeah, and so they even had reserves held back that they could throw forward at any point. So I don't know. The problem the French had was that their morale is quite bad compared to the Germans. So especially like moving over open ground, coming up ready for assaulting, they were getting suppressed and or paralyzed, etc. quite quickly. So low morale does not give you a very great attacking force. Yeah, it's difficult, and I think partly I let down the French in not performing an attack well. That first artillery barrage, I should have concentrated with these all back, because essentially when these reinforcements were available, that was when the attack kicked off. So they just moved straight onto the board into the attack. I could have held them back here for a longer time, completely dominate the village there, so that then they could move up, eject them from the village very quickly, and then that would be their launching off point to Ston. And doing it that way, I might not have used so much smoke here. Although the trouble was there was units, there was one or two units from here that were spotting on the move up. So I don't know, it's difficult moving over open cover, open ground, especially because it was steep, so they couldn't move so quickly. But I think that I should have done something like that, greater preliminary artillery bombardment, and then a more staged attack. So take that, once they definitely had that secured, then go for that. Instead of, I kind of diverted some of them off to that, some off to that, and some off to going around here, seeing this as a kind of like a softer, because these are woods, it's not quite such great protection as being in the towns. It's a softer sort of advantage, so I eventually dissipated their attack instead of having, you know, a Schwerpunkt. And then that was disappointing, but there wasn't anything they could really do like that except withhold them from any operation, because this was the prior reinforcements to these ones, so withhold these ones from any operation until these came on. But the decision had been, if you remember, that when these ones came on, so these French units were off board, when these ones came on, at that point they were stronger. The Germans did not have these. The French were stronger in terms of battalions than the Germans, so the idea to launch a small concentrated attack to wipe out a major part of the German thing might have been wise. However, all it effectively did was it kind of dislodged a part of the perimeter defence, didn't get anywhere near the main defence, and the Germans after that were able to react quickly enough to fill that gap in again anyway. So, extremely interesting game. I've had a blast. I don't know if I had, it was interrupted for a whole week while I was prepping for the gaming convention that I went to, which was a bit of a shame. So I sort of lost momentum on it, but I picked it up very quickly yesterday, and I just played two turns, and this is on the start of this third turn again, and it just very quickly became clear to me, without smoke and without any artillery, and this attack already having kind of dispersed. It's become too dispersed. In fact, the 149th BCCs, which are 10 B1 BIS tank units, they've been recalled because of losses. The attack was called off. Yeah, that was the other thing I found, is that 37mm anti-tank guns are extremely powerful because they're point firers. Point firers can fire 3 times in a turn, and there's no, so if you're, say, the French moving across here, there's 2 37mm guns there. That's 6 point fires against your tanks, as in the German turn. Not to mention, as you're moving, they can fire as opportunity fire. It's just going to decimate your tank units, especially essentially at a range of close range, which is within 4 hexes. They go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to, on a 4, 6 and up, a tank unit's going to be gone. And even at nominal range, so greater than 4. Oh no, at 2 hexes that would be that. But even at nominal range, 4 hexes, on a 5-2 and up, the tanks were getting obliterated. So you can imagine 6 shots. You're looking for a 5-2. You're going to get at least 1 or 2 of those every turn. And then if they're moving, even more. So the tanks were getting shot at badly. They needed, even with smoke cover, smoke cover would have done it, because the smoke would have been thick enough that beyond the first hex they wouldn't have been able to see through. But it was either that or getting them suppressed beforehand, which would have meant moving my infantry up very close, because here they were too far away to be effective, or the artillery. So I think the lesson I learnt was that even though the French had 63 rounds of 75mm artillery and the Germans had 45 rounds of 105 millimeter artillery, it's not enough. I mean, the Germans used up a lot breaking up this attack, which was, they didn't really need, but it did seem sort of quite threatening, but it would never have really threatened Stan. They should, if they'd used all their artillery here, this would just have been completely obliterated. The trouble was they couldn't see it to start with because it was kind of down in this valley. But anyway, the French just didn't have enough artillery for me to disperse it. So I think the message there was that 63 rounds of artillery concentrated on an attack of against, say, 7 hexes, these two, and I think there's 5 in Stone itself. 63 rounds just on those would have been well spent. As it was, I think this area only took maybe about 10-12 rounds all told during this attack. The rest were kind of spent softening up the approaches, and in the previous attack I forget exactly where all the artillery went, but obviously a lot of it missed. Some of it scattered. Much of it just was ineffective because these are dug-in defenders. So that's the end of this game. It's been great. I have to say that you're looking at I've been filming from the French viewpoint from this way, but now you're looking at it from the German viewpoint, the victor's side. But anyway, now you're looking at my annotations to one of the play aids. Here's my other annotations to the main fire table, morale table, and the modifiers and so forth. This I find is essential. Without all these annotations culled from the rules, the game would be a lot slower than it is. With continuous page flipping, finding that rule that you've forgotten for the umpteenth time. So as it was, with all these essentially moving and firing with most of these units at the moment, that takes an hour and a half, 2 hours a turn. Prior to that, some of the game was sailing along quite quickly up to down to half an hour a turn, perhaps even less when nothing much was happening. Good game. Very interesting manoeuvre, and just unfortunate. Very interesting game of manoeuvre. Essentially, it does slow down when you get to all the firing because there's such a lot to do. You got your air sorties, your artillery, and then you got all your movement, and then opportunity fire on that, and then fire back against the opportunity fire, and then the other player has his fire turn and so forth. But it gives a great feel, and I think models nicely that kind of pace at this scale of an attack. It's not a case of moving up to unit, rolling and saying, okay, eliminated or half eliminated. There's step losses, there's suppressions, and it takes a while to dislodge a unit. It doesn't necessarily take so long to suppress it. You could sail past it, but if you want to get into a place, you have to dislodge those units. Okay, yeah, wonderful. I'm not sure what I'm going to play next. I feel like I want something sort of shorter and sweeter. I'm tempted to play Panzer Battles because I've been watching USA Patriot. I've forgotten the 664 something. I've forgotten the numbers on the end of his YouTube moniker. He's putting up some videos of Panzer Battles, and it looks very interesting. Otherwise, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? I'll play this. Okay, so I think that's all for GD40. I kind of don't want to stop. I want to keep talking because I don't want to leave it. I've had such a good time with it, and it seems a shame to leave. But one has to finish at a certain point, and I'll have to pack it all away. And I know that I probably won't revisit it soon. I was on a roll before the week broke up the momentum. I was on a tactical combat series roll, so I thought I might go back and revisit Leros straight away. But no, that momentum has been broken, and so I'm looking for something sort of smaller and shorter for now. Well, I'll see when I get back to it. I know I will, because I have you know, that distance will make the heart grow fonder and all that. And I will definitely have fond memories of this. So, just so the French had this op sheet was their attack op sheet. I accidentally wrote succeeded on it, but it didn't succeed. They had one more op sheet they were trying to accrue weighted turns for, which was the fence having taken Ston. And the Germans had quite a few op sheets here, which were essentially this was the defence of Ston, but all of these units have moved out to only this one. These 2 battalions are defending Ston itself, and the others had other ones to take them down here. So that there's some that were going into attack here. You can see that was going to be handily broken up by the French. There's no way they could have taken Candieres there. But essentially they were to move down here, some to move here, and some to move right down to here. And you can see they were doing that quite nicely. These ones should have taken Candieres. It wasn't going to happen. So those are all in operation. Here's the tally. Can I get that? There's the tally on all the HE rounds are spent, all the smoke gone. Didn't use any illumination rounds. We didn't have any night fighting for the French and the German. Okay, don't know what else. That's it. The end of my GD40. So that's a day's fighting, a whole day's fighting, from 0400 hours to 1740 hours when the French called off their attack. Which means that the Germans successfully defend their major attack off map on Sedan, and the campaign against France continues on track.